I was especially lucky 28 years ago when I was 16, because some of the books my dad had read us, Broken Arrow, about the Apaches, Cochise, Geronimo, and their example, Last of the Mohicans, made me want to get my hands on every book about Indians that I could. And when my dad came home telling us that he'd begun to organize with Lauro Garcia, who's here today from Guadalupe, Arizona, and Margie, and the Yaqui Indians in Guadalupe, I said, gee, Dad, maybe could I spend a couple of weeks with you this summer? He talked it over with my mom. And my mom understood that it was time for us to start working together. I'd always been real proud of my dad. I remember one time Caesar organized a fundraising event down in CSO, and Alinsky was out for it, and I was about 9 years old. And there was a kid named David Alinsky there. And we almost got into a fight because I said, my dad's more important and tougher and better, stronger than... He did teach us that. We're fierce. Rosses are fierce in our loyalty and our love. And I will never forget that summer because it changed my life. Remember the first, this is when a guy named Goldwater was running for president of the United States. From the state of Arizona, Guadalupe had their first ever candidates night in history as the sun was setting in that little school. Women and men who'd never stood up in their entire lives were confronting the elected official there. A Republican supervisor came in with a white belt and white shoes. And the only reason he'd come there because they'd registered about 900 new voters. It just seemed so simple what he was doing. Registering people to vote, and all of a sudden I was helping to teach basic English so more folks could become citizens and they could be voters. And they could begin to win the victories. And what was astounding that summer was how fast the victories came. The supervisor was promising 10 miles of paved streets and stop signs and street lights, and you can have your own mailbox and you can do that. It was just like it was Santa Claus coming in, but only because those folks had gotten organized. They'd gotten organized. He loved that DeGiorgio campaign almost more than any other in his whole life, I think, because it was a comeback for him. He'd had for himself what he considered to be a failure in Syracuse. Here was this proud man in the middle of the 60s, and unfortunately some of the children of the 60s weren't ready to take the disciplined approach to organizing that my dad had to offer. And he wasn't quite sure what to do with some of them, except fire their ass. So he came back a disappointed man, and he came back to rejoin his best friend, Cesar Chavez. And all of a sudden, he was back to the camp where my brother was born. Except this was 1966, and at 19 I got to rejoin my dad. And I spent a few weeks with him down there, and he just, he didn't care how old you were. You could walk, you could talk, he'd put you to work, All of a sudden I was out with a Puerto Rican crew one day, and a Mexican crew, a Filipino crew, a black crew, just passing out those little mosquito zumbadores as fast as I could, and people were laughing like hell. There was this horrible foreman by the name of Jesse Marcus. And there was a beautiful, he had everybody scared. until my dad went to work on them. Not with his fists, but with his wit. And it was sharp. And by the time he got through with Jesse Marcus, every worker and every crew was laughing like hell at Jesse Marcus in front of him. That was power. In 1968, right after Caesar finished his fast, my brother drove me down to Delano. We met my dad, and we went back to Boyle Heights, where I lived my first 5 years. And within a couple hours, Tony Rios and others had gathered about 12 of the stalwarts, and they were ready to go. We didn't even have the registration materials. We got those in a hurry. They just put up a simple map that night because my dad didn't want to waste any time planning. You know, we had a few hours left to go. Real simple map, and I guess I wasn't old enough to vote yet. And I was a bird dog that day. What that meant is he gave me a piece of chalk, and I'd go door to door, and I'd find out if anyone needed to register to vote. And if they did, I'd just mark an X in front, and he'd come right behind me. It was great. The next thing I knew, I was driving a car and speaking in English and Spanish about Bobby Kennedy and hope and power and let's go and make a difference and whatever my dad was telling me to say. He'd just write a few notes down, you know. So when I graduated from college in 1960,
bird looked like the NRA, the New Deal bird in yesteryear. Financially, we're still in the dust. I hope to get up and out gradually within the coming months. I think that we can keep our present membership. We can begin to pay ourselves $50 a week and pay for the gasoline expense. The great if, of course. Thank you very much for the contribution. Hope this is the last time we have to burden you with it. Regards to old Caesar. May 14th, 1963. Dear Caesar, knowing how well things are going for you has both bucked me up and turned me a screaming shade of envious green. Mientras aquí va un cuero de iguana, that's a iguana skin, $20 bill. Fred. January 3rd. January 3rd, 1964, from Fred. Dear compañero de la pluma, dear friend of the pen, it's a good thing our pal ship doesn't depend on la pluma, or it would have long since have withered away. And I certainly can't excuse the laughs by telling you how awful busy I've been and productive. Because as you know well, around these holidays shoots everything to hell in our line of work. This is January 3rd, just after the holidays. There's little likelihood I'll be down in the valley in the near future. I don't suppose you'll be coming up to San Jose, but if you do, let me know. We'll have one at the hole in the wall for the sake of all lang syne. Warmest regards, Fred. The hole in the wall used to be a little restaurant. We used to go have coffee when we were in San Jose.